I turned 29 that summer, but the number felt irrelevant the moment I stepped into the backyard of my mother-in-law's house. The decorations were intentional, not in a good way. Faded plastic streamers from an old 4th of July bin, crooked balloons tied with string instead of ribbon, and a cardboard sign that said, "Happy Almost 30." Like a warning, more than a celebration. The buffet table sagged in the middle, holding a lineup of dishes that looked like leftovers dressed up as effort. Arthur, my husband, stood by the grill, flipping over hot dogs like it was his sole purpose in life. He caught my eye and offered a weak smile, the kind of smile that says, "Please don't start anything today." I nodded. "Fine, not today." Then she appeared, Dolores, my mother-in-law, moving through the guests like she owned the place. Because she did. She waved her arm toward the driveway and shouted, "Everyone, time for the big reveal!" I froze. My gut twisted. We all followed her gaze. There it was, parked slightly off-kilter in the grass, a rust-covered 1982 Dodge Aries, tires deflated, the words, "Happy 30th," spray-painted in sloppy neon pink across the side. People laughed. That kind of awkward, "what are we supposed to do" laugh. My sister-in-law let out a genuine cackle, slapping her hand on her knee like it was a comedy show. Dolores clapped her hands, beaming like she'd pulled off something noble. "It's a car," she declared. "Your first car. We all pitched in." Arthur looked down at his shoes. I forced a smile that felt like chewing glass. "Thank you. I guess?" Dolores patted my shoulder, her nails clicking against my skin. "It's better than nothing, sweetheart. And people like you know how to make do." There it was. The punch. I blinked, smiled wider, and swallowed the heat rising in my throat. Not here, not now. Later. Lunch followed. Plastic plates, lukewarm potato salad, the smell of mustard and hot pavement. Just as I thought the worst had passed, Dolores stood up with a plastic cup of boxed wine and tapped it with a spoon. "A toast," she said, raising her drink, "to the woman who finally got her first car." Sort of. Gasps, laughter. Some chuckles died halfway through. My sister-in-law choked on her soda and wiped her eyes. Dolores continued, eyes glinting. "You've come a long way from bus stops and food stamps, honey. Who would have thought?" I stood up, not fast, not dramatic, just enough to leave, but Dolores reached out and tugged at my arm. "Don't be so sensitive. It's all love, honey. All love." For a split second, I wasn't at that party anymore. I was back in the pouring rain, walking 5 miles to my night shift at the diner, shoes soaked through, breath fogging the air. I remembered thinking, one day, I'll drive past all of this. And maybe that day did start here. Not because of the car, but because I finally saw the truth. I slipped away to the side of the house. Paint peeled in strips, revealing the wood beneath. A hose lay curled like a dead snake. The air smelled like overripe lemons from a forgotten tree. I let myself cry. Not loudly, just enough to release what needed to be released. Then I stopped, wiped my face. You are not them. You were never meant to be them. Dolores never liked me. Not really. I wasn't the kind of woman she pictured next to her son. I was a project, a charity case, someone Arthur brought home when he thought love was enough. It wasn't. But I had plans once. I remembered sketching out an idea on a napkin during my lunch break at the retail job. A delivery app. Stupid, maybe. But mine. And in that moment, beside a hose and a lemon tree, I made a promise to myself. This would be the last humiliation I swallowed without response. I walked back into the yard, slower this time. I didn't make eye contact. I didn't need to. I watched them. Arthur talked to his uncle, hands in his pockets, nodding. Dolores laughed too loud, like she was auditioning for an audience. My sister-in-law whispered something and tilted her cup toward me. I started studying them like chess pieces. Where they stood, how they moved, what they needed. And I knew my next 3 moves. Arthur found me and wrapped an arm around my shoulders. "It's not great," he mumbled. "But it's something, right?" I nodded. He meant well. That didn't mean he understood. Dolores stood by the porch watching us. Her arms crossed, a smirk playing at the edge of her lips like she'd just scored a point. They think they gave me a car. What they really gave me was clarity. This wasn't just a gift, this was a message, a reminder of where they thought I belonged. But they didn't realize. They put me in a place where I could finally see the whole board. Sometimes silence isn't weakness, I thought. It's the sound of loading ammunition. She thought she was putting me in a seat beneath her. She didn't know I was already plotting to build the road under her feet. And that road started with a broken-down Dodge and a silent ride home. The sun hadn't fully risen when I stepped outside. The grass was wet, glistening in the dim orange glow of the streetlight that flickered like a dying heartbeat. The car sat where they left it, crooked, hunched, and pitiful, the words, "Happy 30th" now smeared by dew. I stood there for a while, hands in my pockets, feeling the cool air on my face. I don't know what I expected to feel. Gratitude, maybe, or pride. But all I felt was a quiet ache. Pride made me reach for the handle anyway. The driver's door groaned when I pulled it open, metal scraping against metal. The seat smelled of mildew and cigarettes. I turned the key once. The engine sputtered. Twice. It coughed, choked, then died. The third time, it didn't even try. I sat back, staring through the cracked windshield. My fingers were greasy, my palms blackened. From the corner of my eye, I caught movement, the curtain in the living room window shifting just slightly. She was watching. Of course, she was. She didn't give me a gift, I thought. She gave me a reminder. Arthur came outside in his slippers, still half asleep, rubbing his eyes. "Maybe it's just old," he said, yawning. "Don't take it so personal." I wanted to say something, anything, but I didn't. His voice was calm, detached, the same tone he used when telling me not to make a scene at family dinners. I realized then, this was mine to carry alone. We towed the car home later that morning, his pickup pulling the weight like an exhausted animal. I sat in silence, staring out the window as the road stretched ahead of us. The Dodge followed behind, rattling in the rearview mirror like a bad decision that wouldn't go away. Every road sign we passed, slow curve, dead end, yield, felt like a personal message. Arthur turned on the radio, humming softly to an old country song. I could hear him tapping the steering wheel to the rhythm. My reflection in the glass looked unfamiliar. I didn't recognize the woman staring back, the one who smiled when mocked, the one who thanked people who wanted her small. My father's voice came to me out of nowhere. I could almost hear him saying it again. "If you want to change lanes in life, you better build your own road first." That thought lingered. By the time we reached the apartment, my head was full. Delivery routes, courier services, local jobs that needed fast hands and reliable wheels. The world was full of movement. Maybe I could build something from that, something that would never let anyone hand me scraps again. Later that evening, I decided to clean the car. The air was sticky, filled with the sound of cicadas. I opened the glove box to clear out the trash and found an envelope folded between old receipts. A registration slip. I unfolded it. My eyes froze on the lines. The car wasn't gifted. It was junk. A write-off. Tax deductible. Donated for credit. Not kindness. My hands went cold. I looked at the name printed on the form. Dolores's husband, not Arthur. The date was last year. She hadn't just lied. She had planned this. I took a photo of the document, my fingers steady. I didn't cry. I didn't even blink. Arthur came in, wiping his hands with a towel. "What are you doing?" "Cleaning," I said. He saw the paper in my hand, glanced once, then looked away. "It's not a big deal, babe. It's just paperwork." I watched him for a long moment. "You knew," I said quietly. He didn't answer. That was enough. He wasn't defending me. He was defending her. After he went inside, I stayed by the car. The air felt heavier now. Still, in the middle of that silence, something shifted inside me. A pulse, faint, but steady. I whispered to myself, "The empire starts with scraps." That night, I opened my old laptop, the one with the broken hinge and missing keys. I searched for statistics, courier routes, small-town deliveries, freight costs between Arkansas and Missouri. The numbers told a story. Small businesses needed help. Rural areas were ignored. Opportunity hid between the cracks. They said the road to success is paved with good intentions, I murmured, typing into the search bar. I'll pave mine with revenge. The light from the screen flickered across the room, washing everything in a pale blue. The sound of Arthur brushing his teeth, then turning off the light, filled the silence. He climbed into bed, kissed my shoulder without looking at me, and whispered, "You should get some sleep." "I will," I said, though I didn't mean it. When he started snoring, I got up, quietly. I took the registration slip and placed it in my file cabinet, under a new folder I labeled Evidence. My first claim. My first step. I sat on the couch, the glow of the TV reflecting on the window, and stared at the dark street outside. Love used to mean choosing peace. Now it meant staying quiet long enough to plan. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated, then picked it up. A message appeared on the screen. "I heard what she did to you. Call me." I read it twice. Then a third time. My pulse steadied. And for the first time in a long while, I felt something close to motion. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, the light from the street lamp casting long shadows through the blinds. The walls felt too close. My thoughts wouldn't let me sleep. They ran in circles, over and over again, back to that glove box and the paper folded inside it. I'd read it twice, then 3 more times just to be sure. The name, the date, the proof. They hadn't just lied. They'd orchestrated it. Outside, a dog barked 2 blocks down. Somewhere nearby, someone slammed a trash lid. Inside me, something kept ticking. I heard my mother's voice, quiet and steady from years ago. Never trust a gift from someone who holds your past hostage. I sat up. My fingers curled around the edge of the blanket. Why would they hide that paper from me? Why pretend it was a gift? What were they covering? The longer I sat, the clearer it became. I threw on a hoodie, slipped into jeans, and grabbed the keys to Arthur's old Nissan. He was still out cold. I didn't leave a note. I wasn't running. I was digging. The drive was quiet, the roads mostly empty. I kept the lights dim and the windows cracked. Every mile closer to their house, my chest tightened. Not from fear, from knowing. I parked behind the hedge out front, killed the engine. The Dodge was still in the driveway, covered with a tarp now. I moved around the side yard, careful not to snap a single twig. Light shone from the garage. Voices echoed softly. Arthur's voice first. "We need to finalize it tonight before she catches on." Then Dolores's, calm, controlled. "We'll just transfer all titles tonight. No one will question it. By the time she finds out, it'll be done." My heart pounded so hard I felt it in my throat. I crouched by the trash bins, keeping low, watching shadows move behind the frosted garage window. Titles? Transfers? This wasn't just about the car anymore. It never was. The garage door opened slightly, maybe for air. I slipped inside like a ghost. The Dodge sat tucked in the far corner. The tarp barely covered it. I moved quickly, keeping to the dark. The glove box opened without resistance. Inside, a folder, thicker than before. Contracts, some with whiteout, others with names misspelled, then corrected. A few copies were clearly forged. I took out my phone and snapped photos. Click, click, page by page. My breath shallow, ears straining for footsteps. Then I heard them, from behind. I froze. A voice like frost. "I wondered when you'd start snooping." I turned. Serafina, hair up, still in heels from whatever dinner she crawled out of. In her hand, a folded slip, yellowed from the car transfer. "You were in on this?" I asked. She tilted her head. "You took the Dodge as insult. We made it one." That hit harder than I expected. I reached for the folder. She stepped back. "You really want to start something you can't finish?" she said. "No," I replied. "I want to finish what you started," she laughed, dry and short. "You'll regret this." "Maybe," I said, stepping sideways, keeping the folder tight against my chest. "But not tonight." I darted past her, fast, unforgiving. Out the side door, over the grass, through the hedge, into the car. Engine on. I didn't look back. The streets blurred as I drove home, my knuckles white on the wheel. I didn't breathe easy until I saw my own front door again. Inside, I locked everything twice. Then I dumped the contents on the table, spread the papers out like puzzle pieces. Dates, names, fake stamps, copied signatures. I opened a new draft email to Cassie and Beaumont. Subject: urgent. Ownership fraud. Body: they hid transfers. They forged. I didn't know this until tonight. I have evidence. Will send scans. Need next steps. Before hitting send, I reached into the drawer, pulled out the pen I kept since Echo's birth. I held it tight. That pen had signed daycare papers, medical releases, birthday cards. Now it would help end whatever this was. The phone buzzed. Unknown number. I opened the message. It read, "Stop. I know where your daughter sleeps." I didn't blink. I didn't gasp. I just stared. Because now it was war. I sat frozen in the hallway, staring at my phone screen. The message glowed in the dim light. "Stop. I know where your daughter sleeps." I read it 3 times. My heart hammered so hard I thought my chest might split. My toes curled in the carpet. Upstairs, I heard breathing, soft, even, unaware. My daughter, innocent, pressed against her pillow with a half-finished bedtime storybook still in her hands. They had crossed the one line I never thought they would touch. My fingers hovered over call police, block number, delete message. But panic had no currency here. I needed strategy, not hysteria. I combed through old texts, emails, reminders. Nothing that pointed to a sender. No clues, no justification. Just the threat. I moved quietly up the stairs and peeked at her silhouette in the doorway. Her chest rose and fell in gentle rhythm. She looked safe. Too safe. I crept back to my phone, needing a foothold in the darkness. Morning came too fast. I drove to my daughter's school under the excuse of dropping off a forgotten lunchbox. The office was calm. A receptionist smiled as though nothing had changed. I asked casually about visitor policy, logs, camera usage. She answered politely, then slid over a printout of pickup authorizations. My breath hitched at one name, Serafina Whitlock. I froze. I never added her name. Arthur never mentioned it. A knot twisted in my gut. Could Arthur be more complicit than silence? Did he give them a seat at the table without telling me? My protectiveness roared. Betrayal stung sharper than any insult. Back home, I went straight to our security system, the cameras I'd installed months ago and never used properly. I rewound the footage. At 2:13 a.m., a silhouette passed by the mailbox. I leaned closer. It was Serafina. Her form slipped through the frame, hesitant, precise. A second clip showed Arthur meeting someone just before dawn. The headlights blurred their faces, but the back of a dark sedan glanced toward my property. A partial license plate showed WX4. I grabbed the footage and backed it up to cloud storage and duplicated onto 2 USB drives. "They think I'm an amateur," I muttered. "They don't know I studied failure before I even tried." The momentum shifted. I called Cassian Beaumont. When he answered, I didn't wait to say hello. I sent him the video links right away, telling him exactly what I had found. Contracts, names, nighttime trespassers. He confirmed my worst suspicions. This was not just bluffing. This qualified as intimidation, property fraud, and if presented properly, harassment. He told me to collect one more piece of proof, a link that tied intent to action. He said softly, "They're smart, but they've already shown their hand. Your job is to let them believe you folded." Fear began relinquishing space to cold focus. That night, I tucked my daughter into bed, watched her drift toward sleep. I held the threat message in my hand and replayed it silently. I remembered the labor room, screams, tears, and Arthur's shaking arm wrapped around me as I gasped for breath. I remembered asking him, "Will she be safe?" Now I whisper into the darkness, "You're why I'll win." Just as my eyes glanced at the glowing phone on my nightstand, it buzzed. An email subject line flickered. "I know what they're planning next." I swallowed. I did not need to see the full message to know that bluff had turned bullet. The envelope came that morning, ivory, heavy, sealed with the same embossed crest Ophelia used for Christmas cards and ultimatums. Inside was a note in her tidy handwriting. Family discussion, noon sharp. Attendance required. I almost laughed. Required. That word fit her like perfume. Pretty on the surface, toxic underneath. By the time I arrived, the driveway was lined with cars I recognized. Arthur's truck, Serafina's SUV, and the gold sedan belonging to a cousin who never showed up unless gossip was guaranteed. Through the glass doors, I could already see them gathered like jurors. The house smelled like citrus cleaner and control. Ophelia sat in her throne-like armchair, pearls intact, posture military. Arthur beside her, jaw tight, but eyes avoiding mine. Serafina leaned back on the couch, phone in hand, pretending boredom. A tray of finger sandwiches sat untouched, same brand of politeness as always. Ophelia folded her hands. "We need clarity after last night's drama," she began. "I think we can all agree. Emotions got the better of some people." Through the French doors, I could see the broken Dodge still sitting in the driveway, sun gleaming off its rust. The scene looked like theater, and I wasn't sure if I was supposed to play the guest or the defendant. She smiled thinly. "We only wanted to help you. That car was a gesture." Arthur nodded, repeating lines that weren't his. "It was meant to ease your burden." I let the silence hang before answering softly. "Then why did I find registration slips that say otherwise?" A flicker of something passed across her face. Not surprise, annoyance. "You must be reading things into shadows, dear." I caught Serafina's reflection in the mirror. Her smirk slipped. That was the first crack. I stood a little taller. "I'm not reading shadows," I said. "I'm reading ink." Ophelia waved a hand, dismissing me like a waitress who'd brought the wrong order. "Let's stay on topic. This is a family, not a courtroom." I began to speak anyway, about the forged signatures, the late-night meetings. She cut me off again, sharp as glass. "Enough," she snapped. "Let's remember what we are." She nodded to a cousin who rose and switched on a projector. A slideshow began. Old photographs, family vacations, smiling faces, the kind of reel meant to bury conflict under nostalgia. The others chuckled weakly, watching themselves in better years. I sat still. Inside, I could feel the heat climbing behind my ribs. They were rewriting the story right in front of me, turning deceit into sentiment. When the reel ended, Serafina leaned forward, voice dripping sweet and sour. "Let's be honest," she said. "You were never part of this legacy." Ophelia didn't even flinch. We welcomed her out of grace, but she's never been more than a tenant in our story. A cousin nodded in agreement, as if cruelty were contagious. For a moment, I said nothing. Yes, then I smiled. Small, deliberate. "Every tenant signs leases," I said evenly. "But I'm the only one holding copies of the ones you tried to hide." Arthur's head snapped toward me. I slid a folded page across the coffee table. The contract. The one with his mother's signature duplicated 3 times. The silence that followed wasn't quiet. It vibrated. Ophelia's voice dropped. "Careful now. You don't understand the full picture." "No," I said, standing. "I finally do." I took my jacket from the armrest. "I came here for respect, not performance. I won't stay quiet to keep anyone comfortable." As I turned toward the door, Serafina called after me. "You think you're privileged now? Don't mistake pity for progress." I stopped, met her eyes, and said calmly, "Privilege isn't being tolerated. It's being in control." No one followed me when I walked out. The foyer smelled faintly of lemon polish. My reflection in the glass door looked nothing like the woman who first came here years ago. My phone buzzed in my hand. A text from Iris. I dug up their original titles. "Meet me tomorrow at noon." I exhaled slowly. "They closed the curtain," I whispered, "but I'm about to raise it." Just as I reached for the doorknob, a creak sounded behind me. Footsteps. A shadow moved at the end of the hall, still and watching. By early afternoon, I was back at my desk. Every inch of it was covered. Contracts, photos, notarized filings, each one a piece of a puzzle they didn't think I'd live long enough or smart enough to solve. I sat there for nearly 2 hours, sorting. Aligning transfer dates, highlighting signature mismatches. The contract for the Dodge, the one they paraded as a gift, had a file date 3 weeks before Ophelia handed me the keys. 3 weeks. I matched that with a withdrawal from one of Arthur's old accounts, one I'd been removed from without being told. Same day, and that money didn't go toward a car. It landed into a trust under Serafina's name. I fired off the first email to Cassian. This isn't a gift, it's asset laundering. Then I stared at the draft of the memo I'd prepared, meant for the Sinclair Holdings board. I'd written and rewritten it 5 times, but there was one line I couldn't finish. Not yet. I pushed back from the desk and walked to the window. The Dodge sat in the driveway, unmoved since they dropped it off. It looked so harmless now, just metal and rust and history, but I saw it clearly for what it was. They didn't bury the truth in some vault. They left it sitting there in plain sight, daring me to see it. At 2:45, I left the house to pick up Aurelia. I parked early and stayed in the car, scanning the sidewalk. Parents lined up, chatting about piano recitals and soccer. I kept my sunglasses on and tried to look like one of them. Then Serafina showed up. She wasn't here for a child. She wasn't even on the pickup list as far as I knew. But she walked with purpose. One of the admin staff handed her an envelope. Thick, cream-colored, sealed with the Sinclair logo. It was too familiar. Aurelia came bounding down the steps just a moment later. As she climbed into the back seat, she glanced toward Serafina and paused. "What's she doing here?" I asked. "She said she was picking something up from the family event," Aurelia said, distractedly fastening her seatbelt. "Something about an announcement next week?" My pulse thudded. I didn't answer. I drove straight home, hands tight on the wheel. Once we were back, Aurelia went upstairs to finish her math. I waited until I heard the door shut before I opened the mail on the counter. It was the same envelope, identical to the one I saw at school. Inside, a printed version of the contract, the same one from the glove box. Except it wasn't. This one had a line added at the bottom. A line that read, "Acknowledged and signed freely on March 22, 2002, under full knowledge of terms." My name was scribbled below in ink that didn't match any of my pens. They didn't just fake generosity. They were rewriting my signature into their legacy. I pulled out my phone and recorded a voice memo. They think their story wins because it's louder, but I'm not here to shout. I'm here to show. Then I forwarded the original scan, the unedited one, to Cassian, to Iris, and to 2 different encrypted backup drives. I'd let them speak their version. I'd let them stage their little family play. But my curtain was just rising. Later that evening, I sat on Aurelia's bedroom floor as she worked on spelling. She paused halfway through the word inherit and said without looking up, "Mommy, why do they say you're just renting when we all live here too?" I didn't know how to answer right away. She tapped her pencil. "I think they're pretending, like that time I told everyone my goldfish won a race." I laughed softly, despite everything. Then I leaned over and kissed the top of her head. "You see it?" I whispered. "And that means everything." I hugged her, not to comfort her, but to feel her strength next to mine. We weren't guests in this story. We were the ones being written out. But not anymore. When she fell asleep, I went back downstairs, sat at my desk, and pulled up the family memo. This time, I finished the line I had left blank. "This is my formal notice of challenge to the Sinclair Trust. Attached is evidence of breach, concealment, and falsification. I request a board review." I scheduled the email to send at 9 a.m. sharp tomorrow. Then I opened my meeting planner and confirmed the appointment with Cassian. We'd start the filing first thing Monday morning. As a final step, I typed out a short public statement, tight, calm, factual, and saved it, just in case. I reached for the silver pen in my drawer, the one Arthur gave me on my birthday, the one with Echo engraved into its side. I clicked it open. It still wrote smoothly. The moment I laid it on the desk, my phone rang. Caller ID, Sinclair Holdings Board. I took one breath, picked up. Hello, this is Marisol. I was reviewing the memo draft in my home office when the video message arrived. Iris's face filled the screen, her lips tense. I found the missing deeds. Meet me at Riverside Cafe, 7 p.m. My pulse hit the ceiling. Doubt raced through me. Was this bait? She had once confessed to me, years ago, how trapped she felt by Ophelia's control. I stared at that message for minutes, weighing trust and risk. If I walked in, they might already know I'm breaking. Still, I gathered the evidence, charged my phone, told Aurelia I was visiting a friend, and dressed in something that blended. At Riverside Cafe, I slipped in early. Iris sat in a corner booth, eyes on the door. She slid over a folder when I sat across from her. I opened it, scanned deeds, time-stamped emails, internal memos, all pointing to title transfers hidden under legitimate facades. "Why help me now?" I asked, voice low. Her voice trembled. "I couldn't live with their lies, especially not when it touched your child." She handed me 2 encrypted USBs. "This is everything I have. Don't betray me." I nodded, heart in my throat. Across the room, I caught a movement. Serafina in silhouette, pressing her face to the window, watching. On the drive home, Aurelia sat in the back seat, fiddling with her backpack. She finally spoke. "Mom, why did Aunt Iris look scared?" My throat tightened. I said nothing. Home came too soon. I locked doors, dimmed lights, tried to act calm. But when I passed Aurelia's room, I paused. On her desk was a notebook, open, in careful handwriting. When someone owns everything, do they actually own anything? My breath caught. She was writing our fight without knowing it. She was absorbing their lies. That shifted something in me, part fear, part pride. The next day, I found an anonymous photo in my inbox, me and Iris at the cafe. And there she was, Serafina, in the background. Watching. The caption, "You really think you can bury us with evidence?" I stared at the screen. The noose tightened, but Iris's documents felt like backbone now. I refused to shrink. That night, I sat before my computer and opened Aurelia's draft. She had written a letter, The Truth of Stealing Home. I reshaped it into something stronger, a public open letter, a declaration. I wove in Iris's documents as footnotes, coded, masked identities where needed. I prepared versions for the press, email distribution, and family shareholders. The words came sharp and steady. They may hold titles. I hold the truth. That is harder to erase. I paused. My finger hovered above send. And then I looked down at the to line. Arthur's name was already there. I swallowed. He wasn't speaking, but he was definitely watching me write. Just as my finger hovered above the send button, an email slid into my inbox. Subject line, "It's time." The sender, Arthur. I hesitated. I hadn't heard from him directly in years. Not like this. My hands trembled as I opened it. A single PDF was attached, along with a brief note. "I'm sorry I waited, but I never stopped paying attention." The document opened to a notarized affidavit, Arthur's own signature clear and firm. It outlined dates, transfers, forgeries. Beneath that, insider emails, conversations he'd saved, time-stamped. He'd been recording them for years. At the end of the file, a video. I clicked play. He sat in a dimly lit room, speaking slowly. I stayed silent to protect her. But when they dragged Aurelia into this, that line disappeared. "Marisol, you trusted me when I couldn't trust myself. Let me return that now." The video ended. I leaned back in my chair, stunned. He wasn't indifferent. He was watching, documenting, waiting. Not for them. For me. And with new resolve, I reopened the open letter and gutted it. Arthur's files changed everything. What was once a cry for truth became a formal accusation, evidence-backed and legally sound. I stripped it of emotion, inserted timelines, made it whistleblower style. I published it online. Then I submitted copies, anonymous, to to the state press and regulatory boards. As I prepped for the upcoming shareholder town hall, Aurelia peeked into my office. "Are people going to hate us now?" she asked quietly. I crouched down and held her hands. "They might, but they'll never say we lied." She nodded. "The truth doesn't mind being questioned," I told her, "but a lie does." That night, the town hall buzzed with soft murmurs and unspoken tension. Reporters lined the back, eyes flicking between screens and faces. I saw Ophelia in her usual place, chin lifted, voice smooth. Serafina, a few seats down, nodded with each rehearsed sentence. "Legacy," Serafina began, "is not about holding papers. It's about holding purpose." I stood. "I agree," I said, lifting Aurelia's rewritten draft, "which is why I refuse to let silence be our legacy." Gasps rippled. I laid it bare. Timelines, Iris's documents, Arthur's testimony, the altered deeds, the manipulation of Aurelia's trust without my consent, all of it. When I finished, there was no applause, only silence. Then the doors at the back opened. Arthur walked in. He made his way to the front and took the mic from the moderator, who stepped back without protest. Eyes widened across the room. Some already knew. Others were about to. He looked straight ahead and said, "Serafina Ophelia, your signatures are on documents that never passed my desk. You misrepresented holdings, coerced silence, and used Aurelia's name like a pawn on your chessboard." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Iris was blackmailed. I saw the emails. I kept them. And I failed to protect the one person who saw me as more than a tool. I felt the lump rise, but I didn't let it break me. He paused, lowered the mic, and walked off stage. A murmur broke into applause. The tide shifted. By the time we returned home, media alerts lit up my phone. News outlets ran headlines with the words, "Sinclair Family Scandal," in bold. A man approached me after the meeting. Lawyer, sharp eyes, thick briefcase. He offered class action paperwork. I said I'd call him. Serafina had vanished. Ophelia raged in the hallway, calling Arthur a traitor, me a fraud. But Aurelia held my hand and whispered, "I'm proud of you, Mom." I kissed her forehead. Just as I reached for the light switch, my phone buzzed again. No name, just a text. "You've started a war. Be ready." I stared at it for a while before locking my phone and turning out the light. They didn't realize. I've already been at war for years. I was already awake when the first ping hit my phone, then another, and another. By the time the sun stretched over the edge of the roofline, my inbox was a war zone. Headlines, legal inquiries, messages from people I hadn't heard from in years. Some sent support, some demanded answers. Others, mostly anonymous, just sent threats. Short, sharp, cowardly. I didn't flinch. I pulled on a sweater, sat at my desk, and opened the open letter again. Not to rewrite it, just to reread. I watched the view count refresh itself in real time. Thousands. Then tens of thousands. People were listening. I stared at the silver pen resting beside the laptop, the same one Ophelia gave me years ago, the one they said was just a birthday trinket. No, it was a marker, a reminder that I was meant to sign and stay quiet. Not anymore. I called Arthur, then Iris. "We're going forward today," I told them. "No turning back." "About time," Arthur said, calm, resolute. The press conference was set for noon. By 11 o'clock, I was already outside headquarters. Rows of folding chairs filled up fast. Reporters milled around, mics clipped to their shirts, eyes scanning every face. Board members stood in clusters, whispering. My name rippled through their lips like wind through dry grass. I stepped up to the podium. Aurelia held my hand tightly. She didn't speak, didn't need to. I began. "My name is Marisol Vega. You may have heard it in whispers or footnotes or angry meetings. Today, you'll hear it from me." I laid it all out. The forged documents, the stolen assets, the manipulated trust fund meant for my daughter. I held up Arthur's affidavit, showed Iris's evidence on the projector. I cited timestamps, signatures, metadata trails. I looked directly at the cameras. "And to those who built this empire on my back while pretending it was your own, this is the moment you're remembered not for what you built, but for what you tried to bury." Arthur spoke next. Short, unshaken. Iris followed via live video. Her voice cracked once, but her hands never trembled. The applause hit like thunder. Then came Ophelia. She stormed to the mic, face stone set. "You don't speak for this family," she barked. "You're rewriting history to make yourself the victim. Marisol signed those agreements. I have proof." She held up a single envelope. Inside, a letter, dated, signed, on our letterhead. I didn't hesitate. I stepped forward, pulled the projector remote from my pocket, and clicked. On screen, the same letter, but time-stamped 6 months after the supposed signing date. Metadata intact. Unforged signature side by side. The air shifted. "You edited that letter," I said. "Sloppily." "You used the wrong logo format. They didn't update it until 2013. That version? It was created in 2015. Ophelia's face fell. She staggered back from the mic. Someone in the crowd gasped. Serafina didn't speak. She didn't move. She just stared. By 2:00 p.m., the board convened in private. Half an hour later, they returned, unanimous. The forged transfers were voided. Ownership restored. The shares, the properties, the accounts. Mine. I gave a short statement to the press, promised transparency, apologized to the shareholders for not coming forward sooner. Not out of guilt, but because it was the right thing to say. Arthur took my hand in his, not tightly, just enough. Aurelia hugged me around the waist, her head against my side. "You did it," she whispered. "No, we did." That evening, I returned to the family grounds. My name now printed cleanly on the land title. The air smelled like old trees and wet soil. Familiar. Humble. At the end of the gravel drive, I stopped. This was where they'd left that Dodge, the gift, the lie. I bent down, dug a small hole, and planted a sapling. Nothing fancy. Just a native oak. "I never owned that car," I said out loud. "I built the road." Back inside, the house was still. I opened my laptop one last time and saw a single email from Ophelia. "My legacy is tarnished, but I respected your fight." I didn't reply. She didn't deserve the last word. I leaned back, closed my eyes for a moment, not to rest, just to absorb. Victory doesn't erase pain. It doesn't bring back time or clean the scars, but it gives you breath again. Freedom. Space. A new beginning. I stepped outside, looked up at the sky, and whispered, "This is only the beginning."